We are traveling through the world of commodities with James Cordier on Why Commodities. James, how are you?
Good afternoon, Joe. I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. And so this episode's all about coffee. And before we get our guests in here, I need to pick your brain on this because as a child, the idea of coffee was like Sanka in the morning, and it was like the special treat at night if you went out to dinner. And then, of course, you had the working class crowd that would go to diners and drink coffee and stuff. But then all of a sudden, there's this explosion where literally out of the womb, children are drinking Starbucks. Oh, how did this, in terms of like generational shift, in terms of how coffee is so prevalent in everyone's life, impact the coffee industry?
That is such an interesting point, Joe. I remember my first introduction to coffee. My father and I were in his wood shop work. And what we would do is we were building model boats, and he'd always have a cup of coffee everywhere, always right next to him. And in Wisconsin, it was quite cold. So his coffee was cold. And I said, what does this taste like? You've always drinking this. What does this taste like? He goes, well, try it. And it was black, no sugar, no cream, nothing. I was probably like 9 or 10. The most bitter, awful thing I've ever tasted in my life. And now you're right. Now kids, I don't know what years they're like starting to drink coffee now, but like young adults, very, very young adults drinking coffee. And it took me till I was probably, I don't know, 16, 17, till I got the taste for it. But yeah, I mean, you're at the mall or you're walking around downtown or whatever, and there's just lines and lines of very young adults having to have coffee in their hands all the time. And I think that really exploded demand for coffee, worldwide. Definitely here in the Western world, but Europe as well. And now, of course, Asia is starting to become more of a coffee consumer than it was not that long ago. So big change over the last decade or two.
You say in the States it's huge, but like now I watch a lot of like British television, and for years it was like, let's drink tea. And now you're seeing like these British cop shows and these British dramas, they're all drinking coffee. I'm like, wow, if the Brits have given up on their tea to drink coffee, something is going on here.
Yeah, for the Brits to give up their tea, that really is something. So this is a shift beyond belief in many cases. It's coffee is certainly the huge trend right now.
And we're bringing on a true coffee expert. And James, I know you and I are going to have a lot of trouble pronouncing his full name, but he is Jonas Leme Ferraresso. Jonas, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Jonas. Thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
And Jonas, we want to be respectful. Do me a favor, so the people who think I'm a complete idiot for butchering your name, just pronounce your full name for everyone so they know the exact pronunciation of it.
It's Jonas Leme Ferraresso.
It was close-ish. Jonas, you heard us doing a little open about talking about the world of coffee, and you've got an interesting sort of journey in the world of coffee. You started as a farmer to become this coffee advisor. So let's start from the beginning. We all see these shots of, the old Juan Valdez commercials of them in the jungle with the bags and everything like that. But what is it truly like to be a coffee farmer?
Yeah, it's a challenge because every year have something to deal. Sometimes it's climate, sometimes it's market, and even sometimes government issues. But farmers are always persisting in growing coffee and got their profit. It's basic. For many farmers that I met, even my parents, it's about a kind of passion with the crop to grow coffee instead of other crops.
All right. So you say your parents were farmers. Is that basically how it is? The coffee farming world it's a family business?
Yeah, it started with my great grandparent that came from Italy as an immigrant in the beginning, in the end of the 18th century, 19th century. And he came from Italy to work in coffee as hand labor in the beginning. And then generation after generation, many people like me, Italians, start to grow coffee, and then have a part of the farm as a partnership with the farmer. And then finally, my father was the first one to buy a real farm and start to grow coffee. And where I got interested in the growing of coffee and the challenges that my father sometimes faces, and how I could deal with that and find solutions.
Wow, that's so cool. What a great and for context, let everyone know what country are you situated in, and where's most of your work revolve around?
I'm in Brazil, and most of my work is focused on coffee arabica, because we have both like robusta, which is Coffea canephora, and I work in the two most important states in Brazil, which grows coffee, with is São Paulo and Minas Gerais. And I usually go to the coffee trips, farm to farm, to evaluate the coffee, how the season are doing, how the crop are developing.
Boy, James, we are going to get a PhD in coffee growing today. I feel it, don't you, James?
Joe, here's the thing. Alternative Options is in Tampa, Florida, and we try and just get a grasp of every commodity that we trade, try and get boots on the ground in Colombia and in Brazil and in Venezuela and Guatemala to see how the coffee crop is doing. Of course, we're in Texas to try and see how many barrels of oil are coming out of there, and Western Africa, boots on the ground there for the cocoa crop. And Jonas is one of our colleagues that has just provided us with such valuable information right from the strongest growing states in the entire world, the two that he just mentioned. And the information is just invaluable. And yes, we're about to get a lesson. Absolutely.
Well, let's start with the phrase and term, Jonas, specialty coffee market. First, describe that and talk about its importance over the last decade.
Yeah, worldwide, mostly in Central America and Colombia, it's been a long time since they're thinking that way of specialty coffee. But in Brazil, it's something new. Let me say, in the last 15 years, it's when I saw a huge changing in farmer mind related to the specialty coffee chain, which means why we cannot grow better quality beans, as long as Brazil had a good technology, had very willing farmers to do their work and take care of their beans. But they always think, for a long time, they've just thought, okay, let's grow coffee and sell beans. But now they're diving in this specialty coffee market for 15 years. A lot of change. I saw many farmers that are interested in growing specialty. They are exporting specialty coffee worldwide. So probably Europeans and Americans in the last 5 years are seeing a lot of high-end, good quality coffee from Brazil too, very close to the ones that drinkers receive from Africa or Colombia or Central America, which is very interesting to me to see how this movement of specialty beans grows in Brazil, and was the reason that I start to work with the coffee in the beginning is in the specialty coffee chain, to give some opportunities to farmer in order to have the commodity coffee, the specialty coffee, so they could see what kind of market is better for them and have the better opportunities. So it's very nice to me to see how it grows in Brazil.
Interesting. And so can I swap out specialty for premium? Is it a better quality coffee when we're talking about these new coffees that you're making in Brazil?
Even specialty or premium, or in Brazil we have gourmet coffee. I don't know if it's the right pronunciation. But it's all related, in my opinion, to good quality coffee. It's very depending what a kind, sometimes the method you're using to say to the customer what the quality is, what the cup profile your coffee has. So if we're talking about specialty coffee, the STIA protocol, it's about what we're talking, the scores that the coffee have, quality, acidity, body, and everything. But in Brazil, we have a different method of cupping the coffee, which we separate with soft, hard, real, riot. But basically, always the coffee is the same. It's just the method that we score then or qualify the coffee. But in the end of the day, it's important to say this is good quality coffee, this is not, this is average. It's just the method, the
Got it.
metrics.
Oh, that's good.
You know?
And so, James, tell me about the sort of lasting impact now that has sort of the game has changed with Brazil being involved in the specialty coffee market. How is that? What's the long-term effects in commodities when it comes to that?
The specialty coffee really has an effect on how much total coffee is consumed, because a lot of people are interested in the premium or gourmet, as Jonas has mentioned. I think that is like a later in the day type of coffee that someone wants to enjoy. The workhorse that has been Brazil. My gosh, you mentioned Juan Valdez a little while ago. Colombia used to be the largest producer, producing 10 million bags or 12 million bags. Brazil, decades ago, started, producing 10 and 12 million bags. I think we're now up into the 60 million bags. So 6 times and 7 times the size of what Colombia is. So Brazil, I think, has been like the real workhorse, producing Arabica coffee, Robusta coffee. And I think the premium coffees, Jonas, what percentage do you think the premium coffee, based on the whole production, how much is the premium coffees? Is that 5% of the production?
One thing that's interesting about Brazil related to specialty, many people in Brazil just call it fine cup, like with no defects, with good quality. We, along the years, because Brazil produce a lot of natural beans instead of the washed one that we have in Central America and in Colombia that more people are usually drink and know about the quality of washed beans. And but Brazil, because of this tradition to grow naturals, we start to develop machines to select the naturals, because it's really hard to work with naturals because during the harvest and the post processing. So sometimes we have a farm with a standard cup, a natural standard cup bags. But after processing, selecting, doing everything, we have a nice fine cup of 80% of the production of the farm. So the machine take all the residue and make it the coffee better. Because in terms of cup quality, if we take a natural for almost all the regions in Brazil and take out the defects, we're gonna have a fine cup most of the area today with more than 8 points plus. So it could be like 50% of fine cup in Brazil or more if we have the right market for that, because sometimes it's do not worth it, like it's fine to better sell for the commodity standards or for some type of coffee standards instead of put more labor over the beans to make fine cup. But let me say, the coffee that born as a specialty in Brazil today, probably something, I believe, between 15 to 20% of the whole production. Born special since the beginning. It was not something prepared after that, but today it's about that. Is worth it to make it special or not? And with the market in the levels that we are seeing today, even the standard coffee worth a lot of money. So many coffee farmers are selling good beans for the traditional market because the differentiation between specialty and standard coffee for the market today is not too huge as used to be when the prices are very low, because we are already in the top of the price. So specialty do not have ways to pay so much more for a coffee or a bag of coffee if the standard bag of coffee is already very expensive.
That's really a great point. For our listeners and viewers today, coffee prices traded on the New York Board of Trade are at the highest level ever in 50 years. So we don't have like cheap coffee and very good coffee and a huge, change from the difference between the two levels, because generally coffee, just Arabica, good quality coffee, is sitting well over $3 a pound, the highest price in a half a decade.
Wow. And James, we've touched upon climate change on these episodes, and Jonas briefly mentioned it earlier. How about the importance of Brazil upping their game, so to speak, has impacted the effects of climate change? Because, now that there's more coffee, you're not so hamstrung with climate change. Can you see anything in data that says, oh, that because Brazil is producing at such a high amount, even though climate change may affect other parts of the world, we're just getting so much coffee from this country?
We have been. I mean, the trajectory has been, from 10 million bags to over 60 million bags now over the last decade or two. Irrigation really, I think, is the focal point. How many farmers and how many co-ops have the ability to irrigate the land, and which ones are going to go without irrigation, cross their fingers that they're going to have ample moisture each year. And of course, 2024, Jonas, correct me if I'm wrong, 2024 was likely the driest year in decades. It rained. I watch Brazilian weather maps daily, and from like March or April all the way through October, November, it barely rained. And so we've got a real discrepancy here between irrigated lands and non-irrigated land. And the non-irrigated land really took a massive blow to this coming year's production. Jonas, could you speak to that?
Yeah, exactly. The Brazil always face some kind of challenge related to how the world changes. The first one was related to labor, which we had a lack of labor along the years. That's why Brazil have so many areas with big machines and technology. It's because farmers face a problem. Okay, labor is expensive. Coffee is not before the not worth a lot, so we need to bring more technology. So many farmers changed the way of producing, went to flat areas to grow coffee, and the coffee changed in Brazil in terms of yields and everything. Then we have now in the last, I gotta say, the last 10 years, I saw a lot of issues related to climate. Sometimes it's drought, sometimes it's high temperatures, and the drought happens in different months, and this affects the coffee in a different way. So farmers started to see even irrigation is an expensive investment for coffee crop. Farmers are seeing in Brazil, even in mountainous area, that is the solution for now. And I saw the growing of irrigated area in many regions that I went in my coffee trips. It's kind of fascinating to see how fast the farmers adapted to what they need because of the climate. If I'm not mistaken, Brazil have about 1.8 to 2 million hectares of coffee. But let me say not more than 2 decades ago, just about 4 to 6,000 hectares of coffee was irrigated in Brazil. Now we are talking about something about 500,000 hectares of irrigated coffee in Brazil. And we do not have the data for the last year, which many farmers start to irrigate the coffee because of the drought that we had. So some regions, they face it that we need to irrigate if you want to harvest coffee for the next season, no matter the investment. But today they pay the investment because the coffee is in a high levels. So farmers are seeing that, okay, we need to irrigate it, but it's not just about irrigation. It's about we are gonna have enough water to irrigate all the areas, which areas maybe farmers need to move to different places to could have better I don't know say the word exactly, but to store more water in reservoirs, which the soil is better for that and things like that. So farmers we are in a changing moment in coffee because of these climate issues. Things like regenerative agroforestry, organic growing is being discussed more in Brazil than it used to be. So climate is saying, okay, you need to go that way or that way if you want to thrive in the coffee industry.
Interesting. You mentioned organic, Jonas. Let's pull that thread. How is that transition going over? Because now I think we sometimes have too much information, and now we know the importance and the differences between organic and non-organic foods. So how is that going down in Brazil? Are farmers gravitating towards that? How important is it in the market itself? Let's get into organic.
Yeah, organic in Brazil was the second part of my life. So I started with specialty, and then after 2 or 3 years, I got involved in organic cultivation with some farmers that I assist. And I saw too a lot of growing in this segment in the last 8 to 5 years. A lot of farmers more interested because now we have more accurate technology for organics. Because not like in the first episode of organics happens in Brazil about 22 years ago when the coffee hit the bottom level of price. So farmers thought, okay, I do not have coffee do not worth a lot. Maybe I stop to use some kind of inputs or fertilizers in order to make it cheaper to grow coffee. But was very experimental in that time. And many farmers thought organic is about to not treat the coffee with a good fertilization practice, but it's about to use the right technology to have good yields in coffee. So after that, now we have plenty of technology, data, science data to say, okay, use that technology, this technique. So farmers avoid the usage of agrochemicals and in a type of fertilizers that we know as soluble fertilizers, which are produced by industry in order to sustain a coffee crop. But what happens in the last year, it's the same thing that happens to the specialty coffee chain. The organic chain suffered a lot with the high prices because the differentiation for organic is still not high as used to be. Used to be the double price for the commodity price, a bag of organics. Now farmers having something close because like James said, all the different differentiations between price of all the categories of coffee are very close, like board quality coffee, caneforas, robustas, arabicas, specialty, any kind. They're very close the price for each ones because we are in the top. It's too much expensive to buy a bag of roasted beans. In organic, it costs the double price that the standard coffee is today, which is already expensive. So even organics now, which used to be a very interesting business, now is something that farmers are thinking about because we lost some of the yields when we grow organics is the characteristics because it's hard to give all the support using no agrochemicals and no soluble fertilizers. It's possible, but always the farmer will produce less coffee than the traditional methods. So the farmer thought, okay, I'm producing less coffee, and the price that the market for paying for my organic is not too high. Maybe I should think about the next season if I will stay in organics or will continue with standard. But I always say to my farmers, the organic coffee is more stabilized market. So even if the coffee prices dive deep, the organic always stay in a good level of price for farmers. So farmers have to analyze not just today price, but the future. So always coffee will be in that high, or if you go out of organic or specialty, maybe in the future you lost more money because coffee stays more time in lower prices than high prices usually. So it's everything that we have to think, the firm have to think in order to changing way of creating or not.
Interesting. And James, let's get into the commodity side and trading side of this, because I think for the uneducated, be like, oh, I can just trade coffee, blank, just the coffee. But it sounds like, as Jonas is breaking down, there's a lot of forms of coffee that are trading on the market. So if you don't mind, James, give us a little lesson in terms of like, what do we have out there in terms of the world of commodities?
Jonas is talking about the local market in Sao Paulo and Minas Gerais and locations like that. We trade one coffee grade. It's Arabica mainly, with a blend of Robusta, and it's just a particular grade that's certified, New York Board of Trade, ICE exchange, and we only trade one variety of coffee here in the United States, and that's the Arabica primarily, and then Robusta is traded in London, and that is it. I think the local qualities and the local different levels that Jonas is referring to, those exist, but that's not what we're trading. We're primarily trading just the single graded contract in New York. The real interesting question right now for trading commodities in coffee is the entire size of what we're expecting the Brazilian crop to be coming up. That is the real crux of what the entire world is looking at right now. Jonas is smiling. It's like, yes, everyone wants to know how big or how small the upcoming crop is going to be. And specialties are interesting. One tastes better than the other. There's different markets for that locally in Colombia and in Brazil and Guatemala and Mexico. What we're after is the entire crop. Okay. How big might it be? And Jonas, I think, as you know, the entire world's waiting to hear from Brazil how large the crop is going to be. And of course, the rains came so late this year. I mean, usually it's raining in October and November. That is like good timing for precipitation, for the flowering, and then the cherries. This year, I think the rains came in December. And then I have seen pictures of landscapes in Brazil, and it is just a sea of white. And the white is the flowers that have finally blossomed on the trees. Was it too late? That is the question. Are these beautiful flowers going to turn into well-sized, healthy cherries or not? And that is what we're really, really interested in after. How soon do you think, Jonas, do we find out what type of yields we'll be having? Are we still months away from learning that? Is it sooner than that? Inquiry minds want to know, and myself and everyone listening is very interested in hearing exactly what the boots on the ground in the biggest coffee states in the world, which is where you are, and this is what you do for a living. How soon might we know what type of crop we're going to have?
Many agronomists and people that really work in the technical side of coffee, I already know the yields will not be great since we got in the middle of October,
Okay.
because the way that the coffee plant works in Brazil, because each country is a little bit different because of the climate and the rain distribution along the year, could change a little bit how the plant works, like a kind of factory. So coffee is basically, we start to understand the next season, like in October of 2024. I'm already seeing the season of 2026 because they start to be formed there with the branches, the leaves, and everything. So what happens? It's in 2023, we had a good regime of rains, a good volume of rains about uh, March, which was in average, kind of. Um, but the problem that happens is during the drought, the period of the year between in Brazil, between April to August, usually we do not have a lot of rain. It's normal, just a few days, a few months, a few millimeters of rain. But this sustained the coffee to not spend the energy during this period of kind of hibernation, you know? So the coffee stay with the energy until we start to rain, the rain again in September, October. So let's during this long drought in 2024, I saw and many agronomists saw the plants are expanding this energy, this which is a kind of sugar that the coffee maintain inside the trunk and the branches. So the plants need to expand this spare energy to survive because of the drought. So when it reached September, we got rains back, but low energy in the tank, the gas tank of the plant. So the blossom will happen because it's a physiology thing, and the plant was prepared for that. But the plant will not do not have enough energy to sustain the blooming and then develop the berries and stuff because there are not so much fuel inside the plant. So we saw beautiful white because when the coffee plant pass for a long stress, it's how the plant respond. The nature do that because the nature think, okay, we're gonna die. We need to put a lot of flowers out to make the next generation good. But with no energy, many flowers fall in the ground and during the blooming season, and just a few stay on the branch of the coffee trees, the Coffea arabica trees. And then there we already saw that the yields for 2025 will be not as great as the market was expecting before the draw. And there is no time enough to the plant because when the rains got back in September, the plant starts to fuel the energy again because of the rains and the sun and the temperature. But there's not enough of time to the plant restore all the energy and got a new blooming in December, for instance. So that is why, in my opinion, the season is already well known for many agronomists or many farmers that sell their coffee in the fields. And the quality of the beans and the size of the seeds will be nice because after December, during the development season of the beans and the berries, we got good temperatures, good rain until now. So the coffee is beautiful, a lot of green leaves, branches. But when you take a look closer, I saw not a lot of berries inside the coffee, a few. So it's kind of average year for Brazil. In my opinion, It's something like closer to 2023, 2024, more or less than that, but nothing close what, in my opinion, the market was expecting for the Brazilian yields for 2025.
Jonas, you mentioned the size of the berries, and some of them look quite good. Are we going to have fewer cherries or smaller cherries or a combination of both of these things?
For the harvest season for Arabicas, what I saw, it's probably we're gonna start the harvest season a little bit earlier than expected because of the rains and temperatures that we are. The metabolism of the plant has kind of accelerated, and the size of and we had in 2024 a lot of small blooming periods of time. So we're gonna see not a good quality of ripening during the harvest season, but the size of berries and seeds will be so much better than last season, 2024. We had a lot of problems with the development of the seeds because of the high temperatures that we had in the beginning of 2024. In this season, totally not. So good quality beans, good size beans will be harvested in this season, in my opinion.
Good to know. Terrific.
So, James, what does that mean for commodities? This is Jonas's prediction. We're not saying this is fact, but it's not going to meet projections. What does that mean in the world of trading coffee?
The discussion about this coming crop is going to be average. I heard that word. There's going to be fewer beans. The production won't be as hoped or as expected. Jonas, I think that the projections for the upcoming harvest is down in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 million bags from what we would have been producing had we had timely rains. We're talking about a 5 to 7% number of less production of million bags coming out of Brazil this year. The fact that we started 2024 basically half the price of where we are now. So we're talking about extreme dry conditions. We're talking about a much smaller crop in some instances. But what I'm hearing is the cut in production might not be as great as what some people had feared. The price of coffee has already doubled from 160, 170 to 320, 330. So to think that, this the lack of production for 2025 isn't already priced in, a great deal of it has been priced, and the price doubled in the last, 12, 16 months, Jonas? And now, as we mentioned, we're sitting at all-time record highs. So it seems as though expectations for a smaller crop are priced in. If we find out that production is just a little bit smaller than what we're hoping for, maybe coffee prices take another, leg up. But my gosh, they're up over 100% in the last 12 months.
So, in a way, James, unless this was because Jonas made it seem like it's not so bad, but so this news is actually a good thing for trading commodities, right? Because we're already record high, so we're not going to lose, all that much, right?
Last year, when coffee had a one handle, that's what we call it, when it's between $1 and $1.99, it had a one handle on it. Coffee is now trading around $3.30, $3.40. Okay, so substantial increase. We wrote several pieces on coffee. We were not predicting a drought like what we just had. We just had a 100-year drought, from what people say. But we had certified stock levels in the world at precariously low levels. So we were taking a bullish stance on coffee, but we had no idea that we were going to have a drought to the effects that we have. We weren't looking for the price of coffee to double. We did expect it to rally. It certainly has. And now we're trying to figure out what the next move is in coffee, sitting at all-time highs. We do have, smaller crops coming out of Brazil. However, other locations in the world, the production looks quite good. Vietnam, for example. Vietnam mostly produces, Robusta coffee, though, so that doesn't help the shortage of Arabica coffee, which is what Jonas is talking about today, mostly produced in Colombia, Guatemala, Venezuela, Brazil. There is some Robusta produced there, of course, as Jonas mentioned, but Arabica coffee is what we're following the closest. That's where the tightest supplies are. When the price of Arabica goes so high, the blend of Robusta coffee starts getting into different areas. The Starbucks of the world will start using a little bit more Robusta coffee to change the blend. The fast food chains, where I understand that a lot of consumers, pick up coffee, the Dunkin' Donuts, the McDonald's, and what have you, they will slowly start pushing more Robusta coffee into their Arabica blends. And that helps with the deficit that we have right now in production coming out of Brazil, for example. So high prices cure high prices. That's one of the ways they do it. Jonas had mentioned that, we're looking at more irrigation coming up this year because the farmers, in many cases, will be able to afford that. A year ago, coffee was at $1.50. Now it's well over $3. If you've got a decent crop, you're sitting pretty good right now. More irrigation, more fertilizer, better crop next year, perhaps.
We are having one thing interesting about Brazil. It's the technology of genetics that we have here. So our coffee have very high yields, not just because of technology, but the varieties of coffee that we are using here. So we have varieties in Brazil in irrigated area. We could harvest more than 100 bags of 60 kilo per hectare of coffee, which is a lot. If you take the average of many countries, it's less than 20 bags per hectare. In Brazil today is about 32 or 35 bags per hectare, something about that. And we have very high-tech areas that we have like 120 bags per hectare in Arabica, which in my opinion, like it's almost crazy to see how good our genetics due to research could go if we put more technology of irrigation, fertilization, and management. And when I talk about Arabicas, it's about that. But when I talk about technology in Caneforas, Robustas in Brazil, in the state of Espírito Santo, which is a traditional state for Caneforas, we have producers that harvest more than 200 bags per hectare using irrigation methods because of the genetics and technology of irrigation. Or Robusta in Brazil in these high yields, it's about irrigation, high technology of fertilization. Use this fertilizer in this period of time, or in this another one in this period of time. It's like a nutrition program for the coffee. And the research studied that in Brazil to make coffee with better yields in a smaller area, like to harvest 200 bags of coffee in a traditional area, I will need 10 hectares of land. And now I could do it in 1 hectare of land. So what I saw in Brazil, it's not about expanding too much the area of coffee, but to make the yields better in most of the farmer. In every year, we got a better step on that. So farmers have areas that could produce more in a smaller area using more technology, more knowledge. So this is, I saw as the future for coffee worldwide, not about expanding, but use the land that we have had to produce more whatever in the same area,
What a sophisticated level of farming in Brazil. 10 times the yield in their hectares versus other locations. That's incredible.
Yeah. And so after listening to Jonas now, James, still feeling bullish on coffee?
We were bullish at 170. So we're trading well over $3 right now. And I think it's just consolidating at this level. I'm not sure what's going to tip it right now. We follow something called open interest. And open interest is the number of contracts outstanding in the futures business, the actual bets being made on coffee prices going higher or lower. And open interest is at the lowest level of the year. So that doesn't give us necessarily a bullish or bearish stance, but what it does give us is a lot of people are waiting and wondering. Generally speaking, when a market is rallying like coffee has, it's being pushed by bulls, thinking the prices are going higher, and they're adding to their position. And that simply hasn't taken place in either Robusta or Arabica futures. They're at a very low level. People are sitting, waiting, wondering how big the crop is going to be and what determination that'll make it to go well into a higher price range, like $4, 33% higher than the price of coffee has ever traded? Or does it back off down to $3 and kind of sit in that level for a while, waiting to find out what the size of the Brazilian crop is? But listening to Jonas today, I don't think it's as much of a mystery as it was just 30 days ago. I think, the people there, the agronomists, yourselves, you're getting a better handle on what the production is going to be this year. And perhaps that's why coffee prices are leveling out at the price that they're at.
Nice. Well, Jonas, if people are wondering how to get a hold of you, find out more about you, maybe hit you up some more questions about coffee, where should they look?
I'm on LinkedIn as Jonas Leme Ferraresso, but if you are, the easier way to find me maybe on Instagram is Jonas Coffee Agronomist, where you could find my posts. And then I could send you, because usually on LinkedIn I do the technical writing. On Instagram I do my daily work on coffee, what I've been, what I saw in that moment. But my articles, a lot of stuff that I write related to coffee, it's on my LinkedIn, and you find everything there to read it and have a perspective of coffee in Brazil, at least the perspective that I saw with the people that I talked during my trips in the coffee areas in Brazil.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. Jonas, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jonas, thank you so much for your continued expertise and your relaying what you're seeing on the ground in Brazil. We appreciate it so much at our trading firm, and we will be remembering you throughout the year as it goes on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James and Joe. It's really great to be here and bring a little bit of my experience and really what I saw in the coffee market, in the coffee fields in Brazil. Because sometimes I saw a lot of people talking about the fields, but they never been on the fields or never even talked with someone that is in the fields, even farmers or agronomists. So it's really great to be in touch with people from market, for warehouse, for traders, to bring that perspective of fields view.
Jonas and Joe, we're fundamental traders. We're bean counters. This is what we do. It's invaluable. Thank you so much.
And James, I feel like I predicted it. I feel like I'm a coffee expert now. I'm ready to go down there and join Jonas. You want to come with me, James? We'll go walk around the fields there, check out the coffee.
We can now both speak intelligently with the locals.
Well, speak for yourself. I don't know if I can speak intelligently, but I'll try my best. James, another great episode. I will see you next time on Why Commodities.
Thank you, Joe. Looking forward to it.